Hey everyone. Have you ever noticed how there's an abundance of labels that go around nowadays? I wager the internet has helped create this because the internet has created a ton of little groups of people all over the world, a bunch of little movements and whatnot. And of course, these things involve a ton of labels. You have the people who fall within certain categories, they now label themselves, and then of course they label everyone outside of those categories, and they tend to think of themselves as the good guys and everyone outside of the category is bad. And yeah, it creates a bunch of nonsense. In fact, I was struggling with how to even title this video because I wanted to make sure people would understand what I was getting into before even clicking on it. But it's hard to even make a title that encapsulates this phenomenon because it's such an interesting thing. I almost wanted to say like ignore the noise for the title, but that could mean anything at that point, right? Even though it would be pretty accurate here, but it wouldn't help people understand what they're getting into. So I just want to discuss this whole weirdness surrounding labeling, and especially people who like to label others, because you see so much of this on the internet now, it's almost like you can't avoid it. In fact, I don't believe you can. There are labels for everything, absolutely everything now. I mean, so many different social movements. You have like the feminists, you have like MGTOW and the red pill and black pill and blue pill and all these stupid things. Then you have, of course, political movements, conservatives, liberals, and then you have varying little groups within each of those categories, and I'm sure other countries have even more because you have more than just the two political parties that the US has. Then you have like economic categories and labels, or like the poor and the rich and middle class and whatnot, and then there's just all these ways of categorizing people, and some of them are really stupid. Like, one of the things I want to discuss in this video is when people try to use these labels to attack others or to make themselves seem better than they are. And this, to me, is utter nonsense. It's ridiculous because the only people who engage in this kind of behavior are insecure people. To just give you an example of what I mean here, even though you probably already kind of know what I'm talking about. Well, since I've been making these videos, you guys know I delve into all sorts of topics. There isn't really a way like you could even categorize what I talk about because it's like almost anything and everything. And there have been plenty of times where I talk about, modern dating and romance and relationships, and I mention like red pill and those movements. And whenever I talk about like how difficult it is for a lot of guys nowadays, I attract a lot of red pill followers to that video. And that makes sense, right? Because anytime I'm talking about those kinds of things like men going their own way, why men are giving up on dating and whatnot, those are red pill talking points for the most part. But the problem is when I attract those red pill commenters with those titles and those topics, I end up finding out that there are a lot of people within those movements who just are not in good headspaces, and they leave ridiculous comments, like things where they straight up paint all women as being the exact same, which is utter nonsense. I always like to follow up that logic with, okay, are you the same as every other guy out there? Are you the same as all men? Like, you can't sweep all women as being the same and not also say that all men are the same. You just can't do that. That's not how logic works. So just stuff like that is ridiculous. And of course, I get red pillars calling me blue pilled and whatnot, which is pretty funny, but also ironic. So I just want to discuss this because I've seen this happen to plenty of other people. And note that I'm only using red pill and all these little like acronyms with that for an example. I'm not purely talking about red pill for this video. There are tons of other labels people use to attack others now, like, calling them racist when they're actually not, calling them a bigot when they're actually not, or calling them, I don't know, there's tons of them, right? There's a ton of words and labels that people throw around it, like transphobic or homophobic or other phobic. There's so many things that people will do, or even just calling someone else like an idiot or a moron if you don't agree with what they say. But yeah, the labels are endless. There are so many of them out there nowadays. And if you've ever interacted with other people in person or online, if you find people who disagree with some of the things you believe in or some of the things you hold close to yourself, you may end up getting labeled various amount of these labels that exist out there. And I just want to let you guys know, always consider the source of whoever is trying to label you, because usually you'll find almost all the time people who label you and attempt to put you down are insecure. This is not something usually that people who are secure in themselves and are trying to be a good person will do. Why are they going to feel the need to label other people? If they do it, they're probably going to do it in a more factual way, like I don't even know, like just something that isn't exactly mean, like you're just calling a spade type thing. Like maybe if someone you meet's intelligent, you'd be like, oh yeah, this is John, he's intelligent, like something like that. That's not really okay. In that sense, like intelligent is a label, right? But it's not a bad one. And they're just pointing out a fact, like, yeah, John here, he is smart. Stuff like that. That's usually the way like secure and good people will label others. It's nothing bad. They're not saying like, here's John, he sucks, he's a bigot, he believes in these stupid things, he thinks that all the poor should be taxed, stupid stuff like that. They're not going to do that. So usually if you get labeled in any way, it's by someone who probably isn't in the best headspace, because otherwise they're not going to do that. Like it's not cool behavior to engage in that kind of activity. I mean, when you really get down to it, all these labeling things are pretty dumb at the end of the day, because all it does is help separate humanity. And I know there isn't really a way around it, because it's kind of a biological thing, right? Like we're always going to form groups because that's the way humans are. We bond with each other, and inevitably we will then create a group, and anyone who's outside of that group can almost be seen as an enemy. It goes back to when we were all out in the wild and you'd have tribes, right? Like you would always trust and respect the people of your tribe, but you couldn't trust other tribes because you didn't know if they'd want to come in and kill all your strong people, take your women and children, or take all your resources or whatever. Like you couldn't trust them. So of course you had the labels of your in-group, your tribe, and they were the outsiders, the bad people, because you didn't know what the hell they would do. You didn't know if they were a threat or not. So that's something that will always exist within humanity. It's why we can never become like an enlightened species as a whole, or why altruism will never work, because it's a part of our psychology pretty much. We just can't get over this whole little tribalism way of thinking. So of course the internet just really enables this how do I put it, less pleasant aspect of humanity. It really allows it to become a dumpster fire out there, because you just see people just being so mean and callous to each other with labels all the time, and it's stupid. It's so dumb. And just to be able to operate in this landscape where you have all these labels flying around, just try to remind yourself you shouldn't be bothered when someone who's insecure is trying to call you a bunch of mean things or whatever, because, well, one, they're probably not even on the money with whatever they're calling you, and two, consider the source. If it's someone who's insecure, who hasn't been working on themselves, why should you care what they think of you? That'd be like if you're in college or whatever and you're talking to a professor who you don't even take classes with. Like let's say your major is engineering and you're talking to a business professor, and that business professor tells you he doesn't believe you'll make it as an engineer. You should be like, okay, well, how are you qualified to be able to tell me that? Like you're in business. I'm studying engineering, buddy. Like I get that you're a professor, but do you even know what the hell you're talking about? It's kind of like that. Like if you have some insecure person who doesn't work on themselves and they're trying to label you as something, it's like, how the hell could you know? And even beyond that, if you were a good person, you wouldn't have said those things. So yet again, why should I listen to what you have to say? So yeah, as you can tell, I'm kind of passionate about this because I think it's so stupid how people do this. I try not to do this myself because of how ridiculous I find it. But you just see so many of these dumb labels get thrown around, and people will even do it to try to exert power on others. Like whenever I keep going back to I hope people who fall in this category don't think I'm like attacking everyone within it, but I do often get the red pillars, as I mentioned, who will like attack me, and I know sometimes they're doing it as a way to kind of exert power over me in their own little way, trying to basically say that what I have to say doesn't matter because I'm blue-pilled. Oh, so sad, right? So that's something that happens often, and you can usually tell when someone's trying to undermine your argument using labels. So as soon as that happens, just don't listen to what they have to say. Don't take it personally, because it has everything to do with them and not you. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of what I wanted to talk about in this video. It's kind of unfortunate the internet has enabled this behavior to the nth degree, especially because there's an aspect of anonymity. So people can throw around labels without any fear of consequences, whereas they probably wouldn't do that in person because, you know, there are quite a few more consequences in person as opposed to online. So yeah, people become more brave and enabled when they're online and hiding behind the veil of their screen. And obviously you can't do anything to someone through a screen. So there you go. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about in this video. I'm curious to see what you guys have to say on this topic. I imagine all of us have experienced some form of this. If you've been using the internet for even like a decade, which I imagine all of us have, you probably know what I'm talking about. So it's just something we're gonna have to live with. I don't see any way this will disappear. So yeah, try not to take it personally and just always consider the source, because quite often these people are just trying to get under your skin because their life isn't great and they're trying to bring others down so they can feel better about themselves. But that's all I have for you. I truly hope you enjoyed this video. If you like content like this, be sure to subscribe for more. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like on it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Arrivederci!